Hey, what is up guys? JTX here. This will be the final build update for the Bleed Bow Gladiator that I league started. I'll go over some of the changes that are a little different from this league compared to Crucible League, some of the new techs that I've discovered with the build, and also kind of the upgrades that I took with this build. Now, you may notice that in my initial video, I mentioned that Champion is the ultimate end version of this build. I've decided to take a different route this time and actually see how far I could push the Gladiator Ascendancy, because I realized that the only real purpose for Champion is to take on Uber Pinnacle bosses. And if it didn't have to do Uber Pinnacle bosses, it didn't really need to go to the Champions level investments. I note that like the gratuitous violence Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh jewels right now are like 20 and 50 divs, so like 70 divs for an upgrade, which is pretty much out of reach for like most players to even attempt to upgrade the champion. Now, in terms of the actual build, we've made some slight adjustments to this build just to try and make it into a more of a map speed beast, just to kind of show that it can be done as a gladiator and we can use it to run our tier 16 Atlas strategies. So in my case, my Atlas strategy was running Beyond, Delirium, Expedition, and Harvest. This build's really good for doing that. It felt really smooth actually doing these Atlas mechanics with my character and had no trouble so far doing the content. Now, I'll go over the gear really quickly. You notice the gear isn't crazy. This is like a 60-70C bow I picked up on like week 1. Nothing too crazy, about 550 DPS with a 20% dot multi-crafting on it. Helmet just is a suppressed base helmet with increased reservation of skills and a determination enchant for additional mana reservation efficiency. In terms of the chest piece, kind of similar, suppressed gear, life, bit of resistance on it, and then it has the Eldritch mods for increased aura effect for pride and generic increased aura effect. In our amulet slot, we swapped to an Owl's Uprising. I'll also talk about another amulet that I found that was incredibly strong for the build. Before you actually get Owl's Uprising, I highly recommend getting Replica Dragonfang's Flight, ideally with a +3 level to all puncture gems roll on it. This is a new amulet introduced in this league, and it's almost like a mini Ashes of the Stars. It gives you a up to 15% mana reservation of skills, and it gives +3 to a random skill. So the first line can roll anywhere between like Fireball to Kinetic Blast to any skill in the game that's active. So for in our cases, we want either Puncture, Slit Arrow, or Snipe. It helps a lot with the damage on either one of those skills. By far, it's the best amulet we can get until we swap to a Owl's Uprising, and it's very cheap depending on the version you buy. So I think I picked up this one for like 20-30 chaos, and it's a really powerful amulet that you can just use for a very long time. So highly recommend picking this up before you actually switch to an Owl's Uprising. The Owl's Uprising itself allows us to reserve an additional aura, so in this case we've gotten Pride because it was the cheapest one. And then this lets us take another aura, which is Haste, which makes us even faster as a mapper. For my quiver, nothing too crazy, just Flat Fizz, DOT Multi, Life. Notice that a lot of this gear is not crazy. It gets me by for my build. It doesn't need to be a ridiculous investment into the character itself. You can invest in other things in the build to make it more effective. So in terms of quiver, just get a quiver with good dot multi, Fizz damage, Life. Nothing too crazy there. For my ring, I've gone for a Amethyst ring with a Chaos roll on it. And then just crafted on non-channeling skills have minus mana cost. This just helps cap our chaos resistance for later maps because it does become kind of scary with mobs doing poison or chaos degen or just fizzes extra chaos as a Exarch mod because we are farming red altars. This is just there to cap the rest of our chaos resistance. I would highly recommend it if your chaos resistance is not capped. Just pick up an Amethyst ring. You can grab a Fractured Base and reroll it yourself with the Harvest mod for Reforged Chaos. Really easy way to get Chaos res. Other ring, just a generic vulnerability on hit ring. Little bit of life, a little bit of res, and it has the other non-channeling skills have -7 to mana cost. There is a ring swap option here available if you are doing a lot of mapping. You can swap in a Death Rush for your Amethyst ring here just to give you adrenaline when you are mapping. I think this is a pretty good setup, especially just rushing maps really quickly. I'll have some footage in a second about how the character actually feels in maps. It's actually a very smooth mapper. It's very fast and actually pretty tanky. And it also has the added benefit that with the puncture setup, we can actually take down really tanky bosses pretty easily. And our Gov slot, suppress gear once again, life resistances. I've also crafted Fizz Attack, damage leeches life. I get a lot of questions of people asking how do you sustain in this build. Mainly you're going to be relying on your leech from your Slit Arrow setup, and you're also going to be relying on your life flasks, particularly while mapping. Moving on to the belt, nothing too crazy here, just the Lathers. Try go for a good roll one. My roll is pretty average, it's 38 and 37. You probably could go for like a bit higher, like maybe 40 and like a little bit lower on the left side. Boots, once again, suppress gear, movement speed, life, resistances. Just make sure you look at the Eldritch Supplicits. Ideally, you want action speed and bleeding. You inflict deals damage faster. And also, I've added a enchant onto it from lab. Not necessary. I'll cover my flasks now. Just a immunity to bleeding flask. We only really want this flask because we drop our mastery in the tree in the endgame version of our build. So we're no longer immune to bleed. So having one of these bleed immune flasks is really important. How we cap our corrupted blood immunity is we just get a jewel like this. Corrupted blood can be inflicted on you, and then we should be okay for corrupted blood. Just a grounded flask with increased armor, Quicksilver, increased effect, movement speed. And with this flask, I haven't really rolled this perfectly. You can roll whatever you want on this. You can roll attack speed, you can roll movement speed, you can roll pretty much anything you need that you want for utility in this slot. The reason why we don't run a silver flask anymore, because we get a new tech that lets you get it for free on your tree. I'll explain that in a second. And for the jade flask, we just run a evasion rating on it. So flasks are pretty generic, nothing too crazy there either. Now, what is kind of getting crazy though is our tree. So the tree is very, very different from last league, mainly because we are grabbing Supreme Ostentation. So what this does is it means our gear and gems have no attribute requirements. So you can notice that all my gear here, you see the red number on like, let's say my chest piece, like all my gear, it says like technically I can't wear it. But because it is Keystone, we can ignore that and we can put on whatever we want without worrying about stats. This allows some very interesting options now with the new tattoo system. So you look at my stats, like 80, 101, 34. Obviously, that's not a lot of stats for a character at like level 95, right? The reason why it's so powerful is because we don't need to run any stats at all. We can pretty much turn a whole entire tree into tattoos. And one of the most powerful tattoos that people have discovered this league is actually this one here, the Honor Tattoo of the Berserker. So you can onslaught for 4 seconds on hit with this tattoo just by taking this large dex node. Normally getting onslaught on hit is very, very expensive. You either get like a synthesis ring, which costs like between 7 divines, 10 divines just for the base, or you have to run a silver flask. So this one tattoo gives us free onslaught permanently during maps and also in bosses. For the rest of the tree, we also grab a loyalty tattoo of Ahuana. This is one of the new tattoos that allows you to summon a spirit when you're fighting. How this actually works is when you're fighting a unique enemy, so let's say a map boss or a beyond boss or a endgame boss like Exarch or Ida, when you suppress spell damage from a unique enemy, you'll summon Ahuana, and we'll suppress 100% of the time because we have 100% spell suppression. What happens when Ahuana comes out, as you can read here, she'll last for around 15 seconds and then she'll give you a buff that prevents 10% of the suppressed spell damage. So by default, suppressed spell damage is reduced by 50%. So if we take a damage from a spell that does 5,000 damage, suppression makes us only take 2.5k damage. This further increases the amount of damage that is suppressed, so an additional 10%, and that's increased by the buff effect for each Remarkable tattoo we have. And Remarkable tattoos are tattoos that give spell suppress. So if you're having trouble capping your spell suppress on your gear, I highly recommend getting a couple of these tattoos, just across your tree. So I think I'm running 3 here, so like 1, 2, 3, just to give me additional spell suppress. And for each one of these spell suppression tattoos, it gives you a buff that gives you 20% increased effect. So essentially we're adding another 16% increased spell suppress damage. So we're suppressing 66% of the damage of the spell, so we're only taking a third of the damage from spells from bosses. So this is actually a really, really powerful tech that lets you take a lot more hits. Particularly, it could be in the Exarch meatball phase. It could be in a Maven fight. When something hits you, you start taking a lot less damage from other spells. So that's just a cool tech. You should take a note of. And this actually stacks really well with our Mage Bane. Because we are grabbing Supreme Ostentation, we don't get any bonuses from attributes anyway. So our strength doesn't give us any life, our int doesn't give us any mana, and our dex doesn't give us any other bonuses. So it kind of works well with Mage Bane, because Mage Bane turns off your dexterity providing any bonuses to evasion rating. We have about 80 dex now, so it's about 7 to 6 spell suppression. It goes well with Supreme Ostentation because both of these kind of turn off the effect of your stats. In terms of the other tattoos that we do use for the build, we're using Honor Tattoo of the Oak. So pretty much everywhere else on the tree, it's Honor Tattoo of the Oak for increased maximum life. And we also grab a Honor Tattoo of the Dove for a bit of chaos resistance. Pretty much these are all the tattoos that you'll be running. So you can see all of these Honor Tattoos of the Oak. And the final one that we do note is the Honor Tattoo of the Hatungo. I talk about this in the very first day 1 video where I mentioned this is increased reservation efficiency of skills. We run a couple of these to help out with the mana cost early on, especially if we don't roll like a perfect helmet. For example, my helmet's only 8% on my either mod, it should be 10%, but I don't have to actually get 10% because I have these tattoos here. It just helps rounding out the reservation efficiency that we do need on the build. I highly recommend these as well. Really good for our build because we are reserving a lot of auras. In terms of auras right now, we are running Haste, Determination, Malevolence, Pride. So we're running 50% auras already. We're running Raw Banner, and we're also running Flesh and Stone. This build can even fit a Herald of Purity with a bit more investment. If you did want to push the build a bit further, you could. I didn't see the point of this time, but if you did want to run one, you would run reservation efficiency on your chest piece. So same way you craft your helmet, you just slap it with essences till you get 10% reservation efficiency. And you'd probably want an Enlightened 4, and then you can squeeze in Herald of Purity as well. I know at this point you also run out of gem links on your gear, so you probably need to run an Unset Ring for, let's say, your dash or for your utility, and you slot in Herald of Purity. For my case, didn't seem to really need it because damage is already fine for maps, it's already fine for bosses, but that is an option if you want to push the build even further. Speaking about cluster duel setups here, this has just been the exact same since from the very beginning. Battle Hardened, Force Multiplier, Master Fundamentals. I've mentioned the medium clusters as well. What is different this time is we're running a small cluster duel with Enduring Composure. So this adds endurance charge every second you can hit recently. So one of the problems before is after you switch out of your Enduring Cry setup, you don't have a reliable way to generate endurance charges. So this kind of fixes that problem. So if you get hit once in a map, you'll keep ticking every second you'll get an endurance charge, so you get your endurance charges pretty much permanently up in a map, given that if you get hit, this is a really, really good way of getting your endurance charges back for your ascendancy. And also in terms of, we have a map swap here. So notice how we grab Savage Wounds, Barbarism, and Juggernaut already. So this is originally on our tree anyway. We can slot in an Inspired Learning here, but by picking up Stamina, so we have 4 notables. It's a really, really easy way of putting in a power multiplier in our build if we do want to do maps, especially for Legion, for Delirium, anything that spawns a lot of rare mobs. Inspired Learning is very, very good in the spot because we already grabbed 3, and endurance charges are also good for us. So if you do want to run Inspired Learning, this is the spot you put it in. I highly recommend it for running juiced maps, and you'll also see in my footage that it helps out with both defense and offense, and it's also a really nice power multiplier for your build. Other than that, the tree hasn't changed too much. The only other notable thing is we drop Dirty Techniques over here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 points to grab this nose plus 6 points for the mastery. In Crucible League, in the previous patch, this actually gave damage as well, but now it's just been changed into elements deal damage 15% faster. So not actually not as good as it once was before. So we drop these nodes here to give us more room on our tree to pick up other nodes. So potentially just grabbing this small cluster and grabbing these nodes here, and also grabbing large dex nodes so we can slot in the Honor Tattoo with the Berserker. For our Watcher's Eye, we're running a Haste Watcher's Eye, so you're phasing while affected by Haste, and you're also running a Malevolence deals damaging almost deal 15% faster while affected by Malevolence. You don't need to have the exact double rolls. I like having phasing in the build because it makes it feel a bit smoother for mapping. There's a lot of options here that you can run. You could also run DOT multi while affected by Malevolence. You could get Pride, increased attack damage. You have a couple of options here on how you want to do it. You can have Determination, like reduce critical strike damage with Determination. Really just try to look for a 2-mod one that'll fit into your build. I've gone for Haste and Malevolence here because I feel like it makes mapping a bit smoother. So I would recommend, if you do get a chance, try to get Haste, try to get phasing, and also try to get the faster DOT while affected by Malevolence. In terms of Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh, we're just running Fortitude to give us Permanent Fortify from the Champion Ascendancy. Since we're not swapping to the Champion Ascendancy now, we want to take some of their survivability and I guess tankiness, so we're grabbing Fortitude from these 2 nodes here. I think this actually makes the build a lot safer, especially for very juiced mapping. It just gives us a nice little buffer for bigger hits, and with the rest of the defenses we have in our build, this build is actually quite tanky in tier 16 juiced mapping. An additional note for our Timeless Jewel, when we do grab it to get Supreme Ostentation, we also want to look for these 2 nodes here. So we want to look for Expertise and Ancestral Knowledge. You look for 2 decent nodes here. So in my case, I've got an 80% increased phys damage and 50% increased damage to bleeding. So these are 2 really, really powerful nodes for the build. The way you can find out what these 2 nodes are is if you go into Path of Building. I'll show you right here. So if we go into Path of Building over here, if we want to find a Timeless Jewel that gives us these 2 nodes here, we just go to Find Timeless Jewel over here. Also make sure that your skill is set to the damaging skill that you're using. For example, in our case, Puncture. We click Find Timeless Jewel, and we're looking for a Elegant Hubris, and we're looking for Supreme Ostentation. So this is Caspero. And then we're setting which jewel socket we want it in. So we want it in Eternal Youth, which is right, like this is the one that covers the two major stat nodes. And then we're going to be sorting it by bleed DPS. And then we're going to just click, we can also take filter nodes. So this just turns off the search looking for nodes that we haven't allocated. So if it sees a really, really good jewel for points that we haven't allocated, it might say suggest this one. Force it to look for the two nodes on your stat notables instead of looking everywhere in this in the radius. So we tick this on, click generate, then we click a search, and then it will generate some search results for us. So we can copy these trade URLs. We can open it on Path of Exile Trade. And here are the jewels. So these are like 1 to 2 divs. You can copy this jewel and you can put it into the build and you can see what it does. So let's say I add it in, and then let me swap this jewel to the new one. And bam. So this one has exact same thing. So even though the number is different now, so this is 46140, it does the same thing as my one right now. So if I look at my old one, this one is 51960. So they essentially do the same thing, same notables, and same keystone here. So that's how you use the path of building Timeless Jewel Search. It's really, really powerful for finding you useful timeless gems for your build. I'll quickly go into my gem setups here so you can just have a quick understanding of what the gem links are at the final phase for the build. So we're running Puncture, Snipe, Deadly Elements, Brutality, Vicious Proj, and Volatility. Volatility is the new gem that was added this league. It's actually a ridiculously powerful gem multiplier for your build. It makes your roll range go much, much higher, so you can get a much, much higher bleed for low investment, given that as long as you attack 2 or 3 times in a fight, this will make the gem better than almost any other support gem in the game. Also note that you can also run Awaken, Vicious Proj, Brutality, the Awaken versions if you want for more damage. I haven't made the change for this one because I felt like this build's already got to the point where it's comfortable doing all the content that I wanted to do, but you can obviously upgrade it if you want more damage. For our clearing setup, we're running Split Arrow with Swift Affliction, Vicious Proj, Brutality, Awaken Chain. So this is actually really, really nice addition to the build. If you want to do fast maps, if you really want to push your mapping potential to the limit, I highly recommend getting an Awaken Chain. Save up for one and buy one of these. It's really, really, really powerful for juiced mapping because there's so many packs of mobs that spawn. The extra chain is very, very noticeable and makes it feel a lot smoother. So I highly recommend getting this gem if you do have a chance. And we're also running a volatility support on this. We no longer run Deadly Elements because Deadly Elements produces the initial hit of our arrow, and we needed to hit at least somewhat decently for us to get the leech from both our mana and from life. So that's why we don't run Deadly Elements in our Split Arrow setup. So it lets us actually use leech effectively. In our helmet, running Malevolence, Enlighten, Haste, Determination. Just a triple 50% auras here, and also helmet has Determination, Reservation, Efficiency. In our gloves, War Banner, Flesh and Stone, Molten Shell, and Dash. In our boots, we're running Frenzy, linked to our Mana Forged Arrows and Ensnaring Arrow setup, and we also have our Pride here as the final aura. In terms of this build, I think it's done fantastically for what I wanted to do. It's taking me through all of the endgame, minus the Uber Pinnacle bosses. It's giving me all my Watchstones, giving me my Atlas strategy, farmed me a lot of currency for my next build. Stay tuned for that coming up. I'm really excited to theorycraft and try that build. We'll be doing it on stream at twitch.tv/JTX if you were keen on tuning in to see the build in progress. I hope people had a good time with their league start. If you were interested in seeing where the character went and how to push this character to the end game, this is my take, my interpretation of how you push Gladiator to the end game. I think you can do a lot of crazy things this league with the tattoo system, and this is just one example of what you could do with Supreme Ostentation. Just really pushing your build to the limit with pure tattoos and having no wasted points at all. I'm curious to see what you guys come up with, either with Bleed Bow or for your own wacky builds that you try out this league. I hope you guys do enjoy this video. I really appreciate the support that I've been getting on Twitch, on YouTube. I really appreciate you guys commenting. If you guys do want to join the Discord server, we have one, so you guys can ask questions or just directly chat with me if you'd like. As always, guys, thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to see more content. And I will catch you guys in the next video.